Mr. President, on Iran, you called it an excursion. You said it would be over soon. Are you thinking this week it will be over?
No,
Are you talking
but soon.
about days?
I think soon.
Okay, and with respect
Very
to...
soon. Look, everything they have is gone, including their leadership.
I'm currently in Malaysia, so that's why we're not doing this sort of update via our usual platform. Hopefully the video will be okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting updates. We did the episode recently on the US-Iran conflict when it really started kicking off. And since then, it was only, a week ago, and now so much has happened. So I guess today we're just going to go through the updates.
Absolutely.
So the first question would be, since that last video that we shot, which I think was like right at the end of February, how do you feel like things have transpired, I guess, in this short period of time?
It's not much of a surprise that this has gone on for this long. And in fact, my personal opinion on it is that this will go on for some time to come unless something dramatic happens. For example, Israel uses a nuclear bomb on Iran. Then what you will see is just complete utter chaos around the world. What that will happen after that, God knows what. But in its current form of this grinding, this, one side bombing the other and tit for tat and so forth, I think it will continue to grind on for some time to come, because I feel that this is a battle of resilience, not just from a manpower, firepower standpoint, but more so from an ideological standpoint. And this is what I suppose the Americans and the Israelis don't really want and wasn't fully prepared for it, which, to be honest, they should have, because they've got all the brains, all the power on their side, and yet somehow they're not sort of game theory this into this particular outcome is quite surprising. Maybe there's a bigger master plan behind it. I don't know, so I'm just a freight forwarder. But we can only gauge from what we see. Firstly, no one's winning. No one is a winner here. Everybody's a loser. I've said this before. Yeah. But by all accounts, Iran is doing better, if not beyond expectations of most external observers and spectators.
I was looking into it, so Iran doesn't have any nukes, but I guess one of their potential allies, Pakistan, has nukes, so maybe that would be a deterrent for US to maybe not, escalate this into a nuclear battle. You don't think so?
Look, I prior to Gaza, I would probably agree with you. But since then, what we have seen is this constant deterioration of any sort of international law and order, where it's really, the mask has been torn off, right? This shining beacon of right and wrong, democracy and evil communists, or whatever democracy is against, that's been torn off, because it's really it's quite clear for all of us sort of observing from the sidelines that whoever has the bigger bomb or the bigger power dictates the rule of the land.
One of the questions that I'm really interested to hear about is, how does this already compare with one of the big disruptions we had previously, which was like COVID-19?
During COVID, the canals wasn't affected, right? So these two things are fundamentally different. The disruption we saw during COVID was a shortage of capacity, right? That came from the over demand that nobody expected. But the waterways were clear. There was full freedom of navigation. Fundamentally, these are two different things. But the net outcome could be quite similar, which is capacity. And where you have the airways closed off, you have the waterways closed off, the supply of capacity to the areas affected and the surrounding regions are going to be impacted. So therefore, the net outcome might be similar, but the course and the process are quite different.
I guess maybe more so better comparison would probably be the Red Sea crisis that we faced recently.
Or just when Gaza happened, yeah. So when
Exactly,
Gaza,
yeah,
obviously,
Gaza.
this will make that look like a dress rehearsal. It will, it's completely night and day. Suez Canal, albeit important, it is but trade between Europe and the rest of the world.
Mm.
It is a percentage of global trade, but not that of things that it would really be of severe impact to global economy. All right, just calling a spade for a spade. Because let's face it, Europe manufacturing, all that sort of stuff for many years has been on a decline, if not almost gone. So whatever that was going through those waterways, albeit important, it was somewhat contained. With this situation, this is a completely different thing. Like I said, when we first did the first market update, when I said, I hope nothing happens to Iran or nothing happens in that region, because the Strait of Hormuz is the choke point for a lot of countries when it comes to their energy, that is oil, right? The Strait of Hormuz controls maybe just under, 15% of China's oil supplies, which is, in a grand scheme of things for China, not a lot, because they've been trying to pivot away from that reliance for some time. They were just simply getting that oil cheaply from the Iranians, right?
Right.
They have been planning for it. Like I've heard on a report that China has strategic reserves that within their own borders of oil of somewhere along the lines of 250 days, right? Wow. So that's a sizable amount of reserves that they can run based on purely their reserves. Whereas India, on the other hand, has something like 9 days or something silly, something ridiculously silly, that once any imports gets cut off to India, what they have on hand can only sustain the country for like 9 days. That's chaos.
Wow.
So when you have a country such as India, of the amount of population, and they run out of oil within 9 days, that's pretty crazy. Japan as well. Japan relying on the oil supply that comes through the Hormuz. I think something ridiculously amount of percentage, something like 80-90% of Japan's oil comes from there.
From what I saw, Australia imports around 90% of its refined fuel supply as well. And it seems like that a fair amount of that's potentially from Iran.
Australia is not of consequence. We've only got 28 million, 26-7 million people, right?
Good point.
We've got enough alternative energy and all that sort of stuff. We'll get by. In the grand scheme of things, even if we have no oil left, it's about 26 million people. In the grand scheme of things, we don't matter, right? We don't matter. But when you talk countries like India, over 1 billion people, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a massive situation. You got on your head. And I just recently read a report today that Russia now has gone to India and say, look, we're good friends, but we're no longer going to sell you cheap oil anymore because it's just now business. And that is like, so again, that's like huge for India, who has up until now been a massive supporter or been rather silent about all of the going-ons with that particular oil well. And it's quite alarming where these countries who are going to be the most impacted by it, either supporting this conflict or have been completely silent on it. Like we are literally seeing Europe being played out, but now in Asia, where a lot of these countries, when the Russian conflict happened with Ukraine, Germany, we essentially lost all their marbles and balls and blew up their own gas, or maybe they didn't, but they didn't say nothing, right? If that was ever a cuck of a nation you ever known, that was it. So you got a lot of these situations at play where my heart goes out to these nations and its people, where their sovereign well-being has been dramatically impacted, and their leadership does not have the backbone to even protect their own people. So asking for these countries to protect others it's a bow that's not going to be drawn, right?
Right. Everyone's got to defend for themselves.
And the reason why I guess we talk about these things is that all of these things have a direct impact on logistics. This has a capacity of of going wrong on every single level, every single metric. Doesn't matter which angle you want to watch it. And I'm afraid it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
As we mentioned, you called the surcharges. Hapag-Lloyd introduced $1,500 war risk surcharges. CMA, CGM introduced $2,000 to $4,000 emergency conflict surcharges per container. What are your thoughts on all this kind of transpiring?
Well, it doesn't surprise me one bit, right? I mean, on one hand, the cost of barrel of oil has essentially doubled. Almost doubled, since this prior to the conflict, right? So there is real cost impacts, and this is again one of these things that I'm going to remind all of our left-leaning viewers on. This when they applaud all these electrical initiatives or this green energy initiatives by trucking companies, shipping lines, airlines, or whatever, right? And it's like, well, a hell of a good, all of those initiatives did, because look, as soon as oil gets impacted, your cost goes straight up, right? You would imagine that if these initiatives was so impactful to the overall supply of how we move things, was so impactful that these costs wouldn't be escalated and implemented so quickly and so much, right? So these are the evidence that tells us a lot of these narratives of this green energy drive, most of it is just bullshit. It's just window dressing, lipstick on a pig. And of course, there's a lot of profit taking here as well by the carriers. Look, their costs have gone up, but I'm sure during a time where they're facing uncertainties of economy, where the demand on their vessels are not certain, in fact, dire, I would argue, because the worst of economic conditions are coming. They are looking for every opportunity to increase their bottom line. And this is just giving them the absolute cherry on the top. Now, with that being said, if this thing drags on, and I think it will get worse. And the real shortages will really impact all the supply. And when that happens, it's no amount of money is going to correct that. Because you're fighting essentially oil supply with nations needing to run their countries. Right, that capacity becomes crunched, especially true for some countries and less relevant for others, depending on where they sit on the hierarchy of energy security.
Maybe we can touch just a little bit more on the main countries that will be affected, and then maybe the countries which would probably be a bit less affected from a logistics perspective.
Well, obviously, any country that's producing their own oil is going to be less affected, and any country that doesn't, heavily reliant on it. Like the Japans of the world, like India's of the world, Africa's will be hurt. It's usually the poorest country that suffers first. And then it's the countries that relies on others for their energy security that will suffer. USA is very much insulated because they do produce a lot of their own oil, and there has been a huge ramp up of their production ever since the situation with Russia. I don't have a complete comprehensive list of who and what, but that's usually the rule of thumb.
Yeah, so just looking at some of the stats here, around 3,200 ships are stuck or idle inside the Persian Gulf. Roughly 500 vessels are waiting currently outside of the Gulf near the UAE and Oman. And then 2.1% of the global container fleet was located in the Persian Gulf region during the crisis.
Every time a ship doesn't move, it's costing money, right?
Yeah.
Each time a ship doesn't move, it costs money. The UAE / that Gulf region was the most important transit route for air freight and air traffic in the world. Ever since this thing happened, that has now fundamentally and completely changed. And because a lot of the global air freight traffic had sort of maneuvered and molded itself around these, flow of traffic, and that Gulf region was very important, and it's one of the lifelines of revenue for those countries, especially the UAE. But that's changed; it's gone now, and I would argue it's gone until the foreseeable future. It's not coming back. So what you will find is that the entire air freight industry now need to rejig all of the routes and routes and so forth and see what will make sense again, because the cargo still needs to flow. The the human movement will still need to flow. It just will now flow in a very different roadmap. Wherever there's uncertainty and a negative outcome, there's always opportunity on the other side, and that is probably, I would say, if I was, for example, the Kazakhstans of the world, the Central Asia of the world, if I was one of those countries, I would be pushing very hard to convert my country into this transit route into the rest of the world, right? So you pivot across. But those are just my internal murmurings in my brain that I'm thinking, where's the opportunity? What countries can take opportunity in this of the Gulf region being such an important part of the air transit reality? I don't think ocean freight will be too impacted, other than the cost that's going to elevate from the insurance costs. That the insurance company will want to cover any vessels. At the moment, it's a region, but eventually the cost will go to everywhere around the world. But more importantly, it's for the commodity vessels, right? Especially the oil tankers and what have you. Those things are going to just be like, everything's going to be at a premium for that part of the sector.
Just a quick touch on some of the air cargo disruptions. So around 18% of the global air freight capacity has been removed from the market. Going to kind of what you said, like how crucial that area is. And then air freight carries less than 1% of global cargo by volume, but around 35% of global trade value. So that's pretty huge. Materials affected they were mentioning is aluminium, helium, sulfur, even pharmaceuticals, electronics, high value components. What other maybe industries you feel like are maybe the main impacts from this?
It's every industry is getting impacted, right? Because every industry that needs goods to be moved needs to be on those ships, and those ships are run by oil, and planes run by oil, right? When you've got uncertainty of routes, right, or your transit time have been stretched out, when you've got costs elevating, this is a huge impact to global trade. Huge. A lot of companies won't survive because they operate on such thin margins, especially those, Asian countries and Gulf countries in the subcontinent, right? Europe is going to have hard days ahead, if not already they've been suffering hard days due to all of the, nonsense that's been going on up that way. So, Europe is really going to cop it. It's really going to cop it. I don't think Europe will ever come back from all of this. If you can't get products to market within the seasons that your products run on, you are a goner, you are redundant. You have no market, you have no outlet for whatever you produce. And now given that now the gas situation, Qatar, I think it was Qatar Doha, was a massive supply of gas. Given now Russia may shut off gas, whatever remaining gas to Europe, their energy costs are already huge in Europe. So a lot of the German manufacturing prowess is gone when they killed off the Russian cheap gas, because they can't produce the product with the elevated costs that due to inflation, that cheaply for the rest of the world to be able to afford it, or to offer it to be reasonable. Look at Porsche, for example. Porsche had a massive downfall from where they were, right? Of course, for many reasons. But energy cost is one of the main things. Right now, I don't think that there is a light at the end of the tunnel until we can put all these conflicts to bed and start commercial negotiations or any sort of negotiations to start trading.
So we have like a pretty clear idea of how, Strait of Hormuz, anything going through the Suez Canal are going to be deeply affected. Does that make Australia a little bit beneficial in terms of at least some trade with China, assuming that most of that trade would not go through any of those such areas?
So yeah, Australia being its location in Asia, we are very lucky to be where we are, right? Because a lot of our goods come from China and Asia, but mostly from China. And those waterways are well discovered, well traveled, and well shipped. And the costs are generally in direct correlation to supply and demand without much influence. Even now, I would argue that we are somewhat insulated from a lot of these uncertainties our other countries may be facing, such as Europe and what have you, because we are but only 27 million people, right? Our costs will go up in the form of, the elevated fuel costs, because eventually when oil is expensive, the cost of running things that's driven by oil are all going to go up. Our gas prices are already up, so the sad reality of it is that due to this conflict, every person on this planet, one way or another, will be paying for it. And be paying for it the years to come. If people didn't think we were all but one living organism that we call this little planet of ours, this is a clear evidence that we are, right? Especially financially.
Yeah, what goes around comes around. Is there any potential escalations you're fearing or you hoping wouldn't happen or may happen?
There is no longer fearing of what may happen or what won't happen. The reality is that it's, the whole world now with this is just, to me, it feels like the wild, wild west, right?
Yeah.
It's like the fastest gunslinger is the most powerful, or, it's whoever's got the most guns and the most bullets and the most willpower is going to win. International law is gone and finished by and large. And it's really about, if I can bark the loudest and if I can hit the hardest, I'm the king. And in that type of environment, anything can happen. Anything can happen. There is sinking of Iranian ships off the coast of India, off the coast of Sri Lanka. Two, not one, but two. Many sailors died. Those ships weren't even armed. They were by invitation by India to go and join a war exercise or some sort of war game, whatever, right? And the US torpedoed with one of their submarines. International law and order is gone, because they're in international waters, and the conflict now has been spread, and US have shown us that it's no longer localized, it's wherever they want this war to be. And that is a frightening thing. Don't forget, ships got to go through those waters. Cargo ships got to go through those waters. And if we don't know when the next attack's going to come, I mean, how do you plan where to go and how to sail? Insurance companies don't like that, because they don't want to be in a situation where they cannot, not predict, but they cannot know what their risk is, right? Nobody's a winner, right? Even if you look at Israel right now, right? That's being bombed to smithereens too by the Iranians. But the port of Haifa is pretty much destroyed or bombed. Jebel Ali in Dubai is bombed.
Yeah.
Even the Israeli businesses in Israel will be suffering. What's scary is that traditionally, the economic world generally has enough leverage and pulls behind the scenes to calm things down, because, if you look at history, even the greatest wars, right, commerce always still continued behind the scenes, right? Deals were still being made, money was still being made.
Sure.
Right now, the only people making money are going to be the people making weapons, right? Maybe that's the game plan. I don't know. Maybe there's an entire rejuggling and reshifting of real estate, right? Destroy it so we can rebuild it again. I don't know. I'm not privy to all these things. Of course I'm not. I'm just a freight forwarder. But one cannot fathom that from a everyday commerce, stock markets, all that. One cannot fathom that any of this is positive for anyone. The smaller businesses, the SMEs, all these usually are the ones that cop the brunt of it, because the powers that may be on the very elevated level, they will find a way to make money from it somehow, one way or another. And that's just the sad reality of proving again. In 2026, it's quite shameful to say, and I will say this out loudly, we are not a civilization that is civilized. It is still barbaric. It is still, if I've got the means to destroy, therefore I will, and therefore it makes me the most powerful. And that is sad. It's sad and it's shameful, right? It's sad and it's shameful. I'm usually optimistic. But it's just like, the sad reality is, it's just like, its own goals on everyone taken apart. We are all scoring own goals at the moment.
Maybe we could just quickly touch on how, obviously oil's been rising. It's the first time in however many years where it's jumped above $100. But one thing that's interesting is that gold and silver's been down. Is that something maybe we can touch on?
I'm not a financial expert, but I do read a lot of this stuff. Right, I do read a lot of this stuff, and one theory, the reason why gold and silver is down, is that It sort of doesn't really make sense. But look, I'm going to say this is what I read, is that a lot of people started buying this sort of stuff, the real money, right? Buying this stuff, hoping that when this thing kicked off, metals would just go hyperbolic, right? Because all the retail investors will just go crazy. That didn't happen. So when this big money hoping to capitalize on that momentum saw that metals didn't actually increase to the amount they wanted, and that in fact it wasn't doing much, they were like, oh, I'm bored with this trade. So they pulled a lot of their money back. So the investment that went into it didn't see the return that they were hoping for, therefore they exit the money. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but this is one of the theories. But one thing is for certain is that retail investors and what have you, we are still going to go into cash because that's most liquid, right? Because that's what we can buy bread with, what we can buy food, what we can buy things that we can need immediately. It's far more difficult to go into the shops and buy something with a piece of gold, right? Sure, it's still liquid, but it's not as liquid as cash. So there is a bit of element where people just want to, when it's too much uncertainty, they just want to go to cash. Okay? Oil, on the other hand, it will shot up naturally, but understand oil goes straight up. It will also come straight down because invariably oil relies on the health of global economics. And the last time I checked prior to this conflict, the global economics wasn't doing well. So eventually when the dust settles, we're still going to go back to the fundamentals of how the world economy is doing. And it's not doing well. A lot of it, I would argue, in the US side of things, you know, I've heard one very expert analysis saying the entire US stock market is a Ponzi scheme. And I tend to agree because the better part of last 12, 24 months, it's been propped up by the AI trade, by the computer chip, NVIDIA trade, all that sort of stuff. And you know what's scary about that trade? It was propped up, a lot of it was propped up by money that was coming from the Gulf states. But now, guess what? Gulf states can't even have a security supply of foodstuffs because a lot of them import their food. 90% of the food is imported, not grown local, because these were just deserts that nobody wanted to live on.
Right.
Through oil, they made money, they built cities, but that doesn't mean it's a viable place to grow any type of food. So 90% of food goes in there, right? So now with the trade, that the money that they're making from the petrodollar, which is, well, we sell you oil, but it has to be in the US dollar. This is where they were getting the funds for to buy the food and build their beautiful cities and what have you. Now with the oil trade being cut off with the Strait of Hormuz, no more money, no more food, right? So when you don't have that situation, where you're going to spend on AI and some silly computer chips so we can talk to a chatbot? The fund that was propping up this little bubble, or not little, massive bubble's going to burst.
And
then you got the Japan money, right? The freaking, that guy, whatever his name is, SoftBank, whatever, right? He's investing so many billions and people say he's a genius. He is, but I'm saying, but much of their oil relies on, 90% of the oil comes from that Gulf, and then no longer happens. What's going to happen to that economy? It wasn't doing well already. So that fund has to drive up now. Coupled with already elevated inflation, bad job numbers, bad property data, right? This is a powder keg that's going to blow out from an economic disaster. It's scary.
It is, and also interesting. So I guess maybe we can touch on, obviously there's a lot of doom and gloom. What can people be expecting? What could people do? Or, just sort of from a ground level, someone that's got a company or whatever, need to move goods logistically, what can they do?
That's a massive question. Depends where you are. I've always said, if you're Europe and USA, if you're Europe and Middle East and subcontinent and all that sort of, that relies on that trade within that area, my heart goes out to all of you, because your business, as you know, has changed forever, if not already gone. For the rest of the world, continue to trade. The show must go on, right? There will be better days ahead. And I always say, now this thing has started. We don't know where the end is, but understand once things start, it will have an end, right? And that's the optimist in me saying, right? Yes, there will be much harder times ahead. There will be uncertain dark clouds ahead, but understand it has started. Therefore, it has to come to an end, because those are the laws of the universe. We might not listen to international law anymore, but the law of universe don't need any of us to listen to or abide to, because it will just be what it is. So bunker down. If you're in trade of goods, understand things are getting tougher, but plan better. Plan better. Take advantage of any situations may present itself that you have an opportunity to accumulate or to exit. Do it. Don't hesitate, right? Reduce your fixed costs, fixed asset costs, right? Flow with the times and roll with the punches, right? Roll with the punches. That's all we can do, because nobody knows how this will play out. No one on this planet, because there's just so many things attached to, or this is the worst type of choose your own adventure, right? At least in the book Choose Your Adventure, you get 2 or 3 options. This is one, like, each time something you choose an option, it escalates to 5 options. You choose one of the 5 options, escalates to 15 options. This has an exponential way of just getting out of hand.
So volatile right now.
It's very volatile. And again, I must say, the likes of New Zealanders and Australians of the world, we are in such a lucky place. We are in such a lucky place because we have a land of abundance. We grow our own food. We have our own energy, and we have such a small population. We are in the best position of surviving these type of nonsense. And all we need is strong leadership that will guide us, that will lead us, that will make decisions, that is unbiased towards any side, that is purely looking after the interests of its own people, protecting its own population, making sure every decision made is made based on the betterment and the well-being of its population and of its own population only. If we can do that, we are in the best country possible in the world to survive any of this nonsense. I was such an optimist, when I was in my younger years, and all these things made me a pessimist. But you know what's going to happen? I'm going to tell you exactly what's happening. We don't have the leaders that can do that. Our leaders don't have a backbone. They are essentially jellyfish pretending to be a human being.
That, I guess, wraps it up for now. I'm sure there'll be more updates soon. Anything else you would like to add at this point, Laura?
During these times of uncertainty, it's very important you ask the questions of your suppliers and saying, hey, what's going on? Market updates, where your market updates, what should I do? How should I plan? Keep a watch of the exchange rates. Australian dollars are going to get stronger, okay? Australian dollars are going to get stronger against the USD, right? It's not financial advice, but for me personally, I feel that Australian dollar will be strong, and therefore there is a bit of silver lining there where your dollar can stretch a bit further. And like I've always said, this is a time to really keep your suppliers close, really close, be intimate with them, because they're going to give you capacity, they're going to give you a lot of attention. Where prior to all of this, other markets, other players who are much bigger than you got the lion's share of their development and their production and so forth. This is a time for countries, like us, where due to our population, our businesses, our companies that exist within our country are generally much smaller than the global scale, right? We never got the priority or the right attention from the people that we're buying stuff from. This is the time that for you to double down, make sure those relationships happen, because more than ever, this is a golden opportunity for you. It's often when times are the darkest where we can stand up the strongest and shine the brightest.
Very well put, La. I guess if you're a business owner and you are confused or you're stressed about this situation, feel free to leave us a comment.
Ask us questions. We're here, and in fact, use this platform to ask any questions logistics related. More than happy to help, and more than happy to direct, or navigate together, right? We don't have all the solutions, but what we do is that we make sure to understand what is going on. We're in touch with our suppliers, carriers, and so forth to understand, what's going on. So we be quick to act and quick to maneuver and be nimble with you. Call us, text us through the YouTube comments, however you like, engage with us. And we will do the best to assist in any way we can.
Well, thanks, La. This was a very good, candid conversation. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Absolutely. Thank you, Daniel.